Hey guys, how are you? Welcome back to One Stop Biology. So, guys, today we are going to start off with a new chapter, a very important chapter again, which is chapter 10 of NCERT Class 11, Cell Cycle and Cell Division. So, we are going to study all the phases of cell cycle, which is interphase, M phase, G1, G2, S phase, one by one. So, today we'll just take a glimpse of what an entire cell cycle is. So, guys, I hope you all would be aware that all the organisms, even the most complex one and the largest ones like elephants, say, right? They or say whale, they all start their life from a single cell, right? So basically, you may wonder how a single cell then, goes on to form such a large organism. So that is where comes the concept of the cell cycle and cell division. So basically, when we say that all the complex or the largest organisms are made up of a single, basically they start with a single cell. That means these cells would grow and divide in order to make those large organisms, right? So that is where growth and reproduction are characteristics of cells, and it is also an important characteristic of all living organisms. So basically, all cells reproduce. How do they reproduce? Right? What I said? All cells reproduce. Right? So how are they going to reproduce? They will reproduce by dividing into, say, first two, with each parental cell giving rise to again two daughter cells, and this keep on dividing. So from one cell we get two, right? Then from this we again get two. From this as well we get two. And in the same way, they keep on dividing and dividing and dividing, and they make up these large organisms, right? So basically, guys, what is a cell cycle? Now we know that cell division is a very, very important process in all living organisms. Now, during the division of a cell, it's not just that the only cytoplasm is dividing or something like that, right? DNA replication is happening, cell growth is happening, right? So basically, the sequence of events by which a cell duplicates its genome, it synthesizes the other constituents of the cell, and eventually divides into two daughter cells. This is known as the cell cycle. So see, it is not that easy, right? So it's not just like, a cell is a small thing, so it will just divide. Basically, what we have read before is that a cell has a nucleus, right? It has an entire cytoplasm. Now, inside the cytoplasm, there are various organelles, right? So in order to duplicate itself, the cell will have to duplicate the genome. So here you have the genome, right, inside the nucleus. So it will have to duplicate its genome. It will have to, synthesize all the other organelles and cytoplasm, and then eventually divide into two daughter cells, two identical cells, right? Now, this entire sequence of event is nothing but cell cycle, right? Now, DNA synthesis. So basically, the genome is duplicating itself. So the DNA synthesis, the genome here is DNA, right? So DNA synthesis occurs only during one specific stage of the cell cycle. Remember that, right? That it is happening during one specific stage in the cell cycle, right? Now replicated chromosomes or DNA are then distributed to daughter nuclei by a complex series of events during cell division. So we'll see what is that series of events as well, right? So basically, what are the phases of cell cycle? Now the cell cycle is divided into two basic phases, right? These two basic phases are interphase and mitosis phase. It is interphase and M phase. So guys, what happens during the cell cycle? So basically, if we talk about a typical eukaryotic cell cycle, what happens is that the cells divide once in almost every 24 hours, right? So remember that the cells divide once in almost every 24 hours. And duration of the cell cycle can vary from organism to organism, and also from a different cell type to a very different cell type, because cell can be of different types, right? So the cell cycle duration, remember that the duration of cell cycle depends on first the organism. So it basically from one organism to another, and then from cell type to cell type, right? So say for example, in case of yeast, the cell cycle happens only in 90 minutes, right? But what we said, in case of humans, it's 24 hours. It's 24 hours, right? Now, as I said that the cell cycle is divided into two basic phases, interphase and M phase, which is mitosis phase, right? So basically the M phase, the mitosis phase, represents the phase when actual cell division or mitosis occurs, right? So remember that the mitosis phase represents the phase when actual cell division or mitosis occurs. The interphase represents the phase between two successive M phases, right? So in between two successive mitosis phases, you have the phase which is known as interphase. So we'll just mention everything here, okay? So guys, you usually you can just take down these notes as well. If you need detailed notes, what you can go do is you can go through my website onestopbiology.com. You'll get all the notes there as well. So what I said, interphase. Interphase is phase between two successive two successive M phases. Remember, so basically guys, now it is significant to note that 24-hour average is the duration of cell cycle of a human cell, right? So cell division lasts for about an hour. Now interphase lasts more than 95% of the duration of the cell cycle, right? So basically what I'm saying is that the interface lasts about more than 95% of the entire duration of cell cycle, right? So basically out of 24 hours cell cycle in humans, 1 hour is for M phase, that is mitosis, 23 hours is for interphase. So basically, guys, interphase is known as the resting phase. Interphase is known as the resting phase, right? And what happens during the resting phase? At this time, the cell is preparing for division by undergoing both cell growth and DNA replication, right? So, in an orderly fashion, what is happening? The cell is preparing for division by undergoing cell growth and DNA replication. and that is why interphase is again divided, right? So basically, before we see that division, let's come to M phase. Now, M phase starts with actual cell division, or as we say, mitosis occurs, right? So it starts with nuclear division and then corresponding to separation of daughter chromosomes. Separation of daughter chromosomes is known as karyokinesis. Karyokinesis is separation of daughter cells. Separation of daughter cells. And then the M phase ends with division of cytoplasm. Division of cytoplasm is known as cytokinesis. Cytokinesis is division of cytoplasm. So both of this happens during the M phase, right? And now what happens during the interphase? So the interphase is divided into three further phases. It is the G1 phase, S phase, and G2 phase. G1 phase is basically the gap 1, G2 is the gap 2, and S phase is the synthesis phase, right? So we'll see what all of these mean. Now the G1 phase, right? G1 phase. So G1 phase corresponds to interval between mitosis and initiation of DNA replication. So in G1 phase, what is having? There is an initiation of DNA replication. So as soon as the M phase gets over, you have the G1 phase. Now that is the interval between mitosis and initiation of DNA replication, right? Right? So basically during G1 phase, the cell is metabolically active and it continuously grows, but it does not replicate its DNA. So basically during the G1 phase, cell is metabolically active, right? And is growing continuously, right? And it is growing, but it does not replicates its DNA. So there are 2 points to remember for G1 phase. It is the interval between mitosis and initiation of DNA replication, and during G1 phase, cell is active. It is metabolically active, it is growing, but it is not replicating its DNA. Now what happens in S phase? So S phase is basically the phase between S phase. The synthesis phase is the phase between DNA synthesis or replication takes place, right? So here what happens? The DNA per cell doubles, but there is no increase in chromosome number. Remember, guys, a very important point to note that during the S phase, which is the synthesis phase, DNA synthesis or replication takes place. So basically, the amount of DNA per cell is doubling, right? So say that if the initial amount of DNA is 2C, now it increases to 4C, right? If it is 2C, it increases from 2C to 4C. But there is no increase in the chromosome number. So if the cell has diploid, that is 2N number of chromosomes, it remains the same. Even after the S phase, this 2N number of chromosomes remain the same, right? Now, in animal cells, What happens during synthesis phase, during S phase? DNA replications begins in the nucleus, right? So it begins in the nucleus and the centriole duplicates in the cytoplasm, right? And the centriole duplicates in the cytoplasm. Remember again, right? Now, what happens in G2 phase? So, basically, during G2 phase, proteins are synthesized in preparation for mitosis and cell growth continues, right? Now, some cells do not appear to exhibit division, like heart cells. And there are other cells which divide only occasionally, and they are needed to replace cells that have been lost, right? Because of, say, cell death or injury. Now, these cells do not divide further and they exit G1 phase to enter an inactive stage, which is known as quiescent stage, which is G0 stage, right? So, there is another stage which is DG0, which is immediately after the M phase. And this stage is for those cells which do not further divide, right? So basically, they do not further divide, they exit the G1 phase to enter an inactive stage of the cell cycle, and this stage is known as descent stage, G0 stage. Now, guys, again, I'll make you remember G2 phase as well, as I'm not sure you have understood this or not. So, basically, in G2 phase, what is happening? We have proteins being synthesized. We have proteins being synthesized for preparation of mitosis, right? And so basically I'll write it here, for preparation of the M phase, the mitosis phase. And the other thing is cell growth continues. So cell continues to grow. Now, apart from that, for cells who do not divide in this way, who basically do not exhibit division, what happens is that after M phase, they do not go to G1 phase, right? They do not go to G1 phase, they exit G1 phase and they enter an inactive stage, which is known as the quiescent stage, which is known as the quiescent stage of the cell cycle. So guys, I hope you would have written all these phases. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain all these phases with the help of this diagram that we have, the circle that we have, right? So it is given in NCERT basically, right? So basically, this represents the entire cell cycle. Say this is a cycle. Now what happens is we start off with the M phase. So this entire phase is the M phase, right? After M phase, there are some cells which go into G0 phase, right? And there are other cells which basically continue to divide. They enter G1 phase. So basically, this is gap 1 phase. Then we have S phase. This is synthesis, DNA synthesis or replication wala phase. Then we have G2 phase, protein synthesis for mitosis. This is gap 2 phase. Now the M phase is further divided into various phases, which are prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and then we have cytokinesis. Cytokinesis, which means division of cytoplasm, right? So we are going to study all these phases in detail, guys, right? So with this, basically, we have covered the entire structure of cell cycle. I hope you would have understood it very, very nicely, guys. This is a very, very important topic. So please do not skip it. Please understand this properly and please go back and revise it with NCERT book and come back with all the questions that you have. You can mention your questions in the comments, or you can also send me your doubts over WhatsApp. I have given the WhatsApp number in the description of this video. So guys, see you in the next video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like it, share it with your friends, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe to it and press the bell icon to get all the updates from my channel. Okay, see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.